This is a response to the leaked script of Digibro's not yet released Shinsekai Yori video. I don't have a problem with people finding all the exposition boring, finding the characters flat, and not being able to sit through the very inconsistent animation, but the script of this video is based around misguided conclusions about the series, stemming from two huge details of the plot. There are several smaller details he also got wrong, and scenes in which we disagree about the intent, because he was in no mindset to even judge them as failures when he had no foundation of engagement. I hope anyone watching this video can trust someone who likes the show to represent it better than someone who struggled to pay attention to it. For Digibro, even though my high regard for Shinsekai Yori means you can't trust my taste, I'm going to make this video worth your while by at some point interjecting a manga recommendation that I know you will love because it's pretty Shintaro Kago-esque while brimming with love for Sunday morning magical girl anime and by an artist who you said draws unbelievably hot girls. I won't hold out for you to ever comment on it and bring it to a wider audience. It's purely a gift for sitting through this. Now, I get the feeling it was probably late into the production of this video that he leaked the script. I read through it right away. It took 5 days rewatching the show while responding to 38 points I found questionable with ample evidence for him to revise something. Got it to him, and he responded saying he didn't know how to respond because a lot of it he just disagreed with or thought I read into the show too much to excuse it. But I provided timestamps in the episodes for a few of the things he is explicitly wrong about, and his response with the video's status in mind does not imbue me with much faith that he will revise any of the 38 points I took issue with. I actually sympathize with that because he thinks he needs to do this video, but I'm not going to be satisfied with just fighting about it in the comment section because I believe he's misrepresenting the story so badly and with influence I think outweighs that of anyone else combined who has talked about the series so much that he should have to take the video down. And he probably doesn't even need to start from scratch with the editing if he just changed some stuff around. If he fixes at least what's contained in pages 2 and 3 and everything else stemming from those points, or someone persuades me he's right, which there's not much room for, I'll take requests as to what to do with my own video here, like delete it or change the title to whatever you want, and it'll all be bunk. So I'm going to cover a few of the more important points now, and be sure to check the description for his own text, full comments, the full comments that I sent him, and a list of points that I'm not reading here. Pages 2 and 3 contain the meat of what Digibro thinks is wrong with the story, that the society is failing in very obvious ways to prevent the existence of ogres and karma demons. The problem is that he's misguided on how ogres and karma demons come to be, and he doesn't understand how the system addresses it. Digibro thinks that stress and just stress is the cause, when actually that just contributes to the cause, and he also thinks that the system is not aware that stress plays a role. It's important to note that episode 12 tells the story of one ogre and one karma demon. Shun, as seen in episodes 8 through 10, is another karma demon. There's a less detailed anecdote of a karma demon in episode 2, as well as an anecdote of an ogre in episode 1 that can be ignored because it doesn't tell you anything about how the ogre developed. Only the episode 12 ogre story, it has stress communicated as one of the factors, and it's notably absent in the karma demon story that quickly follows, which doesn't provide a cause, but what we see of her suggests nothing about stress. And personally to me, with her beautiful home and her sporty ponytail, how she kills herself, and consideration for the people she hurt, that she should have been happy but wasn't, like she had depression. I will admit that there are 3 details that suggest Shun is stressed. 1 being a scenario that there are expectations put upon him. 2 being that perhaps his bonobo stress mitigation behavior pattern acted up after discussing those expectations. And 3, that his body language at one point looks stressed out. However, that 3rd detail turns into an evil smirk, which supports what I think it is he has a compulsive or impulsive control disorder, probably thinking of shit like rape and gore. At the very least, the cause of karma demons is explained to be that the mental images they use to control their cantus go out of whack, and the sufferer leaks cantus from their twisted subconscious images. Throughout episode 10, Shun talks about how he's suffering through precisely his subconscious going out of control, with 0 mention of stress, and he's removed himself from the pressures of school, yet his symptoms are getting far worse. I think because he can't keep his mind occupied. The boy in episode 2 looked down on everyone and was antisocial and lonely, and that's kinda it, again with 0 mention of stress. Now, I want to bring back the episode 12 ogre, because stress was very likely the factor that pushed him to attempt violence. But he had a predisposition toward dark and violent thoughts. Being able to bypass the death of shame means that you've reached a point where hurting or killing others does not bother you, and you can reach that point whether you're stressed out or not, because some people might just be psychopaths. They likely killed the cheater in episode 2 out of fear that that kind of disrespect would grow and let him view other psychics as psychics view mole rats. So on page 2, Digi says that if these were unavoidable genetic conditions society had no way of dealing with, the present situation would make sense. I totally agree with that, considering that many mental disorders like depression are genetic, and normal society can't really deal with them that well, let alone ones that give off radiation poisoning. But Digi really focuses on just the role of stress in episode 12, and has to consider the mention of stressful factors to be in passing to justify his next huge folly, which is that he thinks the society misses the obvious role of stress in these attacks. His writing around this part is very confusing, and in good faith, I've struggled to reconcile the contradictions I'm interpreting, so it would be worth it for him to revise the following points for that alone. So, he says that this is a system wherein the whole point is to condition kids not to feel stress, which is partially true in that they also kill kids who can't handle stress and display personality disorders and don't have enough cantus, and I think like something about the whole like Buddhist aesthetics that they use is sort of to that end, but I don't know, it's hard to say. And he knows that the system added bonobo DNA to the human genome that makes them cut all the stress away. Despite knowing this, he also thinks that the society does not realize that stress can be a cause of ogres, as in he thinks that ogres develop from stress, and he thinks that Saki was the first one to realize that. I think Digi's ideas here indicate a conclusion that the stress mitigation they've done until then, including changing the human genome, was just a coincidence, and they were not thinking of the existence of ogres at all. He's also explicitly wrong about Saki, realizing how ogres develop, and I think she knew everything we knew about that at the same time. The part where Digi said Saki was having a revelation, she was actually speculating and confirming that the kid's death of shame wasn't activating because the kid thought she was a mole rat, and therefore had functioning death of shame as a weakness, and therefore was not an ogre. This idea is pretty present throughout the last 4 episodes, but Digi ties it back into ogres and stress when those concepts are just not relevant in the 3rd arc. He also said the kid was stressed and out of place, which she's not. She loves massacring humans, just like Satoru loved massacring mole rats in episode 6. But I'm happy to say I can finally again figure out what he's thinking by connecting this weird how it should have been bit about feeling othered on the basis of your genetic differences causes stress in itself, which is that the possibility that this kid might know she's different from the rats, and I think that would be valid, and I'd like to mark that down in case it comes up that I'm reading too far into what's apparent. However, the rats thought of her as a messiah, so I assume that they were probably quite attentive to her needs. The latter end of his script goes into how inept the government figures are in the show, which was not the overall impression I got from Shisei and Tomiko being very competent and most of everyone else being normal. And I think Digibro is married to either that idea or something about thinking Saki is smarter than everyone because these wrong ideas are all intertwined. And it's important to keep in mind that the system is effective, though excessive, in its goals of preventing ogres, because they hadn't had one from 250 years ago to the unknown future ahead. And Shun only slipped through the cracks because they eased up and let Saki's group develop on their own due to their potential, and he was showing enough potential to replace Shisei. He also knows that the ogre psychology was fundamentally different, or that that's what the author was getting at, but that they messed up by then revealing he was also stressed out for normal reasons. So I wonder if Digi knows what the author intended, but he's pretending to be like on a dumber layman's level to experience the same story as everyone else. Please at least make this clearer. I think that's all for pages 2 and 3, which were the important meat. So I'm going to start skipping points more, and the subject is pretty subjective, but page 5, Digi says the outfits are not consistent with the fictional era, which rather than thinking of it like imitating 1800s Japan, you could just view the school uniforms as like the primordial outfit for everything else. And, there are trends like the patterns they wear on the field trip continuing onto the clothes articles in their teens, and how it's pretty noticeable whenever they wear black above the waist, there are Their more anachronistic Western articles are like the best ones, so I'm just going to brush off a complaint about them as disingenuous. He also says that characters don't have consistent personal aesthetic, and they don't say anything about the characters. Again, I find patterns like how Saki wears a lot of clothes with details looking like they wrap around the front of her neck and under her arms. She wears like powder blues when she wants to look mature, I think. Shun wears a lot of sashes, which suggests he's proper. Maria tries to play up her cuteness, and there's this like flower thing that you can see on a couple of her head pieces. Satoru has a slightly wild or tough edge, and his winter hat makes him look like he can like shoot his eye out with a BB gun. Mamoru is vulnerable with scarves covering like quaint necklines, and he owns a pair of pumpkin shorts. And years before, I designed a Prince-themed magical agender OC, who was also androgynous, shy, and had pumpkin shorts. Just like Mamoru. I'm gonna go out of order for page 6 because the anthrax bit will be quicker. Digi wonders why they don't keep literally anthrax around. Well, it's explained to be a modified version of anthrax that is highly contagious. It's a biological weapon of mass destruction called the Psychobuster, because it was designed for humans to kill psychics. So it's risky to keep around. Despite all that, and how they're not supposed to be able to kill each other, Digi also says there's no reason why the adults of this village wouldn't be carrying around this weapon at all times, which again suggests he is not aware that the policy against ogres and karma demons is pretty effective. You learn about the anthrax in episode 22, but if you rewatch the show, you might make a connection to the doctor's white powder it looks like was used to kill the ogre in episode 12's anecdote. Digi did that in the script, but the show doesn't actually say it's anthrax, and it doesn't need to be anthrax because the ogre is just like sitting there trusting the doctor to inject him with something. The doctors shouldn't even have jars of anthrax powder on hand in general. That's very weird. I do hope you get Hope another cameo to tell me I'm wrong if so. Page 237 of the novel, by the way, says that it's potassium chloride. Also on this page, we go into how the psychics fight very poorly against the mole rats' ambush tactics, despite how they were said to be strong enough to wipe out an entire civilization and shown as such. I don't think it's really important that they said this, because I think it's more important like what they showed. Aside from Rijin, the monk from episode 4, Shisei, the strongest guy, and Hino, the second strongest guy who puppets a crowd of mole rats to shoot each other, we never see any super big attacks from PK users, and the wording of a PK user could decimate an entire civilization as opposed to any PK user also suggests to me that it's not every PK user. There's also a ton of room for doubt that most PK users are used to fighting, including Saki, who let herself be attacked by the cat. It took 15 seconds without moving to whisper the mantra that would kill it. Digi also says that we witness psychics splitting the earth in two, which we don't, but it is a rumor that Shisei could, and Digi saying it is misleading to the point that I wonder if I forgot about it. We also see Rijin tearing through armies with a thought. However, that attack left him in a bad condition, and we have to mention that he died of an ambush attack too. I also think Digi is overrating Satoru's effectiveness against the mole rats because, there are details about their cries that suggest they weren't being hit until we see them being hit, which was after they gave away their location. I've seen it suggested that Satoru had a special ability to detect the rats too, but Rijin couldn't even do that 2 episodes earlier, so he made Mamoru look around for him. The psychics also could not fight the ambush tactics with super destructive attacks because there are other people around them. Outside the hospital in episode 19, the man says he offers to raise the building, but the woman was concerned about people inside. I truly believe that the psychics do not largely drop the ball in this conflict against just the mole rats in this arc. There are 6 on-screen effective mole rats attack that I will go through and offer my analysis of whether the humans really are weaker and stupider than normal. First one we see, a guy was tricked into drinking poisoned sake by a festival thing costume guy that was really secretly a rat, and I think that's pretty reasonable. Second, chaos starts to ensue after some big explosions and a hail of arrows kills 2 people. I would say this is reasonable because everything's happening so suddenly and it's dark. Third, when everyone's inside Shisei's barrier, the mole rats let toxic gas blow into it, and everyone catches on when a few people cough and fall down. Personally, I don't think I would ever account for that, And with dirt blowing around in the festival environment, I wouldn't think anything if I saw like a cloud coming at me. So I think I'm saying is reasonable. Uh, Fourth, everyone, I guess, is either looking outward or looking at the two most powerful psychics, keeping everyone in order, especially due to the spectacle they're making. There are several mole rats inside the crowd, which are white instead of brown. They're wearing human clothes instead of armor. They're tall enough to be people, and they have flat snouts that look like a human's profile. Also, their eyes are fucked up, but it's kind of like an old anime version with really slashy eyes. They aim for the most important people who already think they're protected by the barrier, and the crazy bald one dies. It's a little shaky, but I lean more towards reasonable. Fifth, next episode, and this is complicated, we see a guy died when he walked past some mole rats with bows and arrows around the corner. Satoru, Saki, and their friend don't die because Satoru knew to be wary of the corner. It's also sort of like a character trait of his, even in the first arc, that he's aware of like battle strategies like that. And Satoru tries two methods to make sure it's safe. First, levitating the torches by it. That's not good enough. Next, he creates a mirror, which was shown to be his predisposition like throughout the series. No one else does it in the story. So the guy who died probably couldn't do it. It's even possible that the rats were positioned more stealthily when not attacking, but they only look in one direction and see the dead guy, and their other friend runs in. The friend was stupid, but the dead guy I don't think so. But also I think the friend would not be out of place in the first arc when everyone was supposedly smarter. Lastly, episode 20 briefly describes mole rats killing people and how some of the mole rats were the human-looking ones, which would get people accidentally targeting other humans, and their death of shame would kill those people off too. I remember when Region was exhausted from the giant attack on the whole army, Mardia suggested that he was suffering from mild death of shame because some of the mole rats could look human from far away. If she's right, then it's risky for them to fight in the dark, and their biological compulsion to not even hurt each other may need resisting for them to try. Do you love density? Do you have a fascination with the sexual awakening of cartoon women of a certain petite body type? Do you like to see artists puke their psychosis onto the medium with zero abandon? Well, you need to check out Yume Goddamn Tsukai. Yume Tsukai is by the same author as Mysterious Girlfriend X, but it doesn't lose its freak power. To say it's about a group of young shamans, onmyoji whatevers, that battle the occult influence of dreams would be doing it a disservice. It's 36 chapters long, comprised of two disconnected adventures. The first arc is about a femboy whose sex reveal ignited the fascination of his otherwise all-female class. The boy was killed the year they met him, only to reappear in the shadows of the present day to reunite his class for an Aztec Jomon Jidai fusion pregnancy vor ritual. The second arc is about a boy and his arranged wife who is secretly a junk sculpture, powered by an alchemic stone and recharged by the excitement he grants her by breathing into her nostrils every morning. There's also an anime which was for some reason like watered down to a PG rating. The stories are different, episodic, but they also borrow elements from the arcs of the manga that might ruin it. I don't know. The manga is essential, and the anime should be ignored until you finish it. It's not really important. Page 7 and 8. Digibro talks about the structural patterns he noticed in the series that were frustrating. Part of this entails episode-spanning conversations that also confirm things that were suggested, and also treats everything that was already suggested as a twist. I cannot completely apply that to any arc's final episode because it's most similar to a span of just 2 minutes in the first arc. The second arc has that finale spanning conversation, but that conversation is about Saki being sad about Maria, not really about confirming plot details at all. It almost applies to the second to last episode of the third arc, but there's fighting and stuff going on, so it's not that much of a slog to be ashamed about. More importantly, I have no idea what Digi is referring to with regard to everything being treated as a twist, and I'm gonna have to trust Davoo to decide that for him. There are twists, like the abrupt wave of bisexuality, the scary ethics committee having a really understandable leader, the position the rats put their queen in, and if there's any part I would say is full on treated like a twist, it would be the mole rats are humans reveal in the last episode, which really turns up the music in a way that does not feel very natural the second time. None of these examples had any explicit prior suggestion too. On the other hand, there are moments where the music and directing aims to tell you how the characters feel more than how you're supposed to feel. Like if you compare the pretty calm reveal that Mamoru was already being targeted with the later part where he recalls the time where we already saw him and Maria watching the trickster cat, they're freaking out because their memories were tampered with. When the false Mino Shiro tells them things that they aren't supposed to know, we're supposed to think that they're acting weird, not freaking out with them. When Saki sees the resemblance between Maria and the kid, there are 30 seconds of attention to her feelings, and it is a footnote in the build-up of the face-off between the kid and Shisei, because that twist was calmly delivered to us beforehand. Digibro can only take guesses at how we're supposed to feel during these scenes, because the show makes him feel nothing. So Digi segues that into another pattern of characters speculating about what's going on and being right, but how in between that there will be doubts that they are right. He says why it bothers him so much, but I don't understand the phrasing of what he said, and I think it would be more helpful to say how to improve it, for instance. But I'll take a quick shot in trying to interpret his problem with the specific example he provides, in which the kids think the rats are going to kill them. So it gets tense for 45 seconds when they're being followed on the river. But it's actually all good, which is cathartic for 40 seconds, until they glibly find out that they in fact were being targeted, but their assailants just decided not to obey. And I wonder if Digi thinks that the speculation and tension was a waste of time, because it's not. Because in the end, these kids still have to come home to the people who ordered their assassination. That might not be what Digi thinks, though. On page 9, he brings up a scene where Saki sees Shun and says that it's the trashiest scene in anime, because it means nothing, and it was just supposed to get us excited because we've been in the cave for 1.5 episodes. He calls it indefensible, so I will do just that. For one thing, this scene was in the original novel, page 400, and it's portrayed basically about the same as it is in the text, with him smiling, and so it's not like the anime just invented it. 2. Shun does not say, like, hey Saki, it's been a while, like a normal person. He says nothing. Saki calls to him, and he runs away, and Saki follows. And I feel like I've seen scenes like this a lot throughout TV and film. Like, usually someone imagines they see a dead sibling, or their childhood self, or the murder victim, and they run away saying nothing and disappear. Even with zero media literacy, just by him not saying anything, I think it would be weirder to not think this was a hallucination. 3. There is strong precedent throughout the series that Saki just hallucinates people. 4. Digibro mischaracterizes the build-up to this, saying that Saki is holding out for him to be alive, but there's actually no indication that she remembers the specifics of the last moment she saw him, so I doubt she could even fathom that he's still out there. Rather, it seems that she just believes he's dead when she dreams about putting flowers on his grave, and it's even reinforced for the audience with him being grouped in with the graves of everyone else the system killed. 5. There's a point to the presentation of the scene being that it's a scene where she finally remembers everything about him rather than just the roles he played. And it makes sense that it's a major character moment for someone. And the follow-up with him guiding her to Kidomaru suggests that her intuition is at max power to the point of like taking Shun's form, and she will trust it when she figures out the kid's weakness. 6. Since he considers this really fucking trashy, I just wanted to remind him that the best anime ever on both of our top 10s, Utena, also has a non-sequitur cliffhanger scene like this, where it looks like Anthy has amnesia. I can defend it too if anyone's interested. Skipping 3 points to page 10, he flat out insults audience members who were excited by the last arcs of violence, which is something pretty new for Digibro. Like with page 7, I don't know what he might think we should be feeling about what, but for me, the violence is more about the spectacle. Digibro gets reductive about why people like Squeeler, says he's just agreeable. And I think actually people liking Squeeler has more to do with how ruthless and abhorrent he can be while being agreeable. It makes like their emotions complicated. Actions like making his queen an incontinent vegetable. What I like about Squeeler is his front of like bootlicking the psychics by calling them kami-sama in loathing and ironic ways, and I really like how he just fucking says to his oppressors what's wrong with them, even when they espouse lies and threaten legal action if he challenges it. Digi mentions how dramatic the 3 on-screen character deaths in this arc are, despite how you shouldn't be endeared to them. Or he uses the words final moments, which widens the pool a bit more to include Tomiko, who, I like a lot, and I would say gets a modest amount of drama in her final scene. The dumb girl from the Spooky Hospital episode, who I like because she decides to stay with that other traumatized girl who can't move. And then there's Nimi, who goes and plays the Dvorak song, which invites probably the fiend over to kill him. And it's a little bit dramatic, but that has less to do with who he is and more to do with how important Saki's mission is. For people who die on screen, Shisei is a similar case. His death is actually dramatic, but that doesn't have anything to do with how much we should like him. It's that his death means everyone's fucked. and the background music is more actiony than anything else. It's not like sad or it's not dramatic. Inui's death is not dramatic at all. It's quick. We voyeuristically watch 3 cuts of Saki crying for 12 seconds with no background music, and then she just goes on like nothing happens. The death of Hino, I can agree, it's portrayed dramatically and undeservedly, but it's not as though there's nothing going on in that scene. He basically laments about how easy it is for these super powerful psychics to get killed by ambush attacks, and then says some bizarre shit which characterizes him more, and by extension, characterizes the village which likely allowed him to exist as an exception with his craziness due to high potential, just like they were going to allow Shun to exist until it got really bad. I'm sorry that I had to go into all that, but again, he's construing the intended tone of these scenes from a complete lack of engagement, and again, on page 11, he doesn't get how the scene where Satoru and Saki get sexual is supposed to be jarring and unusual. That's why it's good. From my position of actually having a foundation of engagement, I can identify scenes that I believe fail in tone, such as the very brief anecdote of the Carmen Demon killing herself, which turns up the sad music and makes Saki cry and act like it's the saddest thing she's ever heard, when it's not really that sad. Before that point, Digi brings up Saki's empathy to the monster rats. He says it's wildly inconsistent. I say it's mildly conditional. I wasn't attentive to every conversation she had regarding this on my rewatch, but all I specifically recall are scenes where someone was hurting them with direct violence and she wanted them to stop. In fact, she seems upset at the earliest notion that the monster rats have thought about their rights. Her asshole side only truly shows after the rats start killing people, so that could be the cause, but it also only shows when the rats accuse humans as a whole of being oppressive, making her confront herself as an oppressor. And remember that her job is basically to watch over the rats as they fight each other. That hypocrisy is a great representation of people who don't care about institutional violence. When Saki finds out that the monster rats were humans all along, it doesn't matter in that it changes whether they deserve rights, but in that Saki is no longer able to ignore how they were essentially engineered to be oppressed. And on page 12, I think Digi links the measures taken against the destructive capabilities of individuals to the society failing, because he's hung up on the mental health thing, which was irrelevant in lieu of racism, but also one of those measures that contributed to the disaster was everyone's inability to kill each other. I wouldn't necessarily say Shinsekai Yori is saying anything, but it does leave you with metaphors for disparate ideas about violence, oppression, and surveillance that can help you figure them out on your own. And that's about it, besides more points I'm skipping, but I have some closing thoughts. So, because this anime is based on a book that we're all too lazy to read, I think it's usually justified that one really tries to interpret what we're given to resolve contradictions. I applied this skill too as a Digibro fan, for instance when bad faith actors detect a contradiction between him revealing negative feelings and nothing deeper about a channel he doesn't watch, and then criticizing someone for mischaracterizing one of his videos without watching it. Instead of just accepting that something a bad show does is dumb, you might be able to resolve contradictions if you extend it some patience and effort. But he watched Shinsekai in the same headspace he watched Eromanga Sensei. Digi and Nate started the series lacking the facilities to imagine a simple reason why Sagi's room is so sanitary, like that she could be leaving her room when Masamune isn't home, and she could go to the bathroom because Masamune lives downstairs, but Digi did not notice that. He thought he lived down the hall. When it came about that Saguri couldn't draw things she hasn't seen before, rather than just seeing it as a failing of her personality, he and Nate took it so literally, similar to how it's said the psychics could wipe out civilizations on their own. Near the end, when Digi goes on a tirade about how Masamune doesn't make a connection between Sagiri and the commenter he used to know, solely based on himself misreading the line, "I'm basically your only reader," as "I'm just your only reader," and completely missing the following line, that Masamune was getting more commenters lately. Like, he must have missed a dozen key lines in Shinsekai Yori. However, if that dialogue went as Digi thought, there's plenty of room to write it off, but he lacks the patience to consider that Masamune thought the commenter was a college student. He can't imagine that the line was just invalid when there's another girl in his harem who read the same story and that's like one of the few things we know about her. And he also lacked the effort to imagine that possibly Masamune, being a published author, put a spotlight on his old work, and his longtime illustrator could have checked it out one day. And that's like a quadruple combo of bad faith in the text. Now, I don't love Eromanga Sensei, but I think shows that get a shit verdict early on don't deserve their unintentional, challenging aspects to be brushed off as dumb or neglectful. and I can prove that Shinsekai Yori is worth believing in. There are certain aspects of the poor production values in Shinsekai Yori that may have been deliberate, weird artistic choices. Compare this sequence from episode 5 as it appeared between broadcast and Blu-ray release. This is one of the more awkward dissonances between visual acting and voice acting in the show, and they could have given her a far angrier expression, like slanted her eyebrows, bugged out her eyes. I wonder if I could do that in Photoshop in like 10 minutes. But they put a comparable amount of effort just to make it prettier. Digibro, I hope this video changed your mind and you don't feel like you fucked up by releasing the script, because you would have fucked up more by releasing the video. I think it's amazing how your commitment to finishing Shinsekai Yori to rip it to shreds resulted in you discovering so many problems with the show you couldn't even anticipate. And I wonder what's the psychological impetus that drives people, like that one Digibro versus Everybody caller who persuaded him to get started on this, to want that kind of content, just ripping it to shreds. I like roasts, and I like teaching moments, but when I see people insult art I dislike, it doesn't give me catharsis. And I haven't enjoyed making this video, and I hope no one got enjoyment out of it.